Weather affects everything, from how we feel to how we live. But what's really going on above us? Each week on Atmospheric Insight, we dig deeper into the science of weather and the stories it shapes. This is Atmospheric Insight, where science meets the sky.
Welcome back to another episode of Atmospheric Insight. I'm meteorologist Adam Epstein.
And I'm meteorologist Riley O'Connor.
All right, Riley, it's April 1st, but no jokes here. We actually got snow in the Sierra.
Yes.
Almost can't believe it.
It was kind of nice. Even at work today, there was a nice rain shower that came down. I was like, I'm going to enjoy this for a minute.
Yeah, very much so. And Mother Nature, in her true fashion, where it's whatever she wants, when she wants, gave us rain on the very last day of the month of March. Up until that point, we had 0.00 inches of rain. So we were on track to be the only non-water measurement month of March ever on record in Sacramento. But there we go. You just updated these numbers this morning. So you saw 0.14, right?
Yes. And it was interesting because I worked over the weekend, right? And I really thought, I kept watching. I was like, we may end up not getting anything before the end of the month because it really looked more promising for Wednesday to get some of the rainfall. It would have been very worrisome if it would have been the driest March ever.
I know. But instead of being the driest month ever, we are tied for second.
Hey, there you go.
Right?
A little bit.
So that's something. We'll take the wins where we can get them. Unfortunately, not seeing a ton of winds when it comes to snow. You did get some reports in, and surely measurable snow up in the mountains that are still open and reporting. But what I charted out here is percent of normal snowpack. It may be hard to read, but I started this on December 1st when the reports came out. And this is for the Central Sierra Snow Lab at Donner Summit. So just one station, but it does a pretty good representation of the Tahoe area. Started off really slow. Christmas came along, got storms, right? It was looking really good. We jumped up to 95% of normal, and that's as close to 100 as we would get. It fell off from there, a little bit of snow in February. We had a bump, and then March came along, hot off the heels of March, and literally hot off the heels. All that warmth decimated the snowpack, and the snow pretty much completely melted. I mean, the snow water equivalent as of yesterday was 0% of normal. Just no snow on the ground.
Yeah. And you look at the little bumps that we did get, and it was promising. You're like, okay, it's looking good. But I think really with those hot temperatures that came in, because typically if we would have more seasonal type weather, it wouldn't melt as fast, right?
Yeah.
But with these temperatures in the 60s and 70s in the Sierra and the 80s, upper 80s here in the valley, it was just insane.
Right. Record-breaking temperatures day after day after day. In Sacramento, was 10 in a row. Over in Tahoe, you had many days in a row, too, where temperatures were in the 70s. So you can imagine how the snow just disappeared. And we were talking about one site, right? The Central Sierra Snow Lab, but it's not exclusive to them. So one dot that crosses that line, the red line, that's Highway 80 on the north side of Lake Tahoe, and the blue line that cuts through, that red dot right there is the Central Sierra Snow Lab. And that's the driest on record, or the lowest snow water equivalent on record. All the other red dots, lowest on record. And the orange dots, second lowest on record. So this was quite the year. I mean, Christmas, it looked good. It looked really good. It was promising.
And thinking back to, because I know you've been here for several years, right? And thinking back, do you remember a time where it was almost as dry as this?
You know, we've definitely had poor years. We've definitely had great years. It can kind of be feast or famine for us. But no, I can't remember a year like this. There have been times where they've done snow surveys and it's more, what's the word for it? Not for show, but it's just the practice of like sticking the stake in the ground and measuring when there's no snow there, right? I've seen that happen before. Yeah, it's kind of what's happening now, except this is the April 1st snow survey where we tented our maximum snowpack. And if it wasn't for this storm that we're getting yesterday and today, there would be literally nothing there.
Yeah. And there's hardly anything there anyway right now.
I know. All right, so ceremonial, I think that's the word I was looking for. A little late, but better late than never, right? All right, so I wanted to stick on this theme of, this exceptional weather and the record warmth that we had through March, because this is down in the history books, and talk about our changing climate and a little bit of history for people that may not be familiar with it.
Hey everyone, my first video got taken down, then I successfully appealed before it got taken down again. So I think it's important that we do a part 3. And let's start with Mike. He says, still trying to push the narrative, huh?
Okay, sorry,
Mike,
I'm still reading comments.
Let me tell you a story. This idea of altering our climate by changing our atmospheric chemistry has been around since the late 1880s. In fact, oil companies knew about it before the general public did. This is an article from Scientific American. In the 1970s and 80s, Exxon employed scientists to start their own research program. This was the first large-scale study and modeling of its kind. Their senior scientist is on record saying, quote, "In the first place, there is a general scientific agreement that the most likely manner in which mankind is influencing the global climate is through carbon dioxide release from the burning of fossil fuels." No surprise, Exxon execs didn't like that, so they began a campaign of confusion. They started something called the Global Climate Coalition. There was a memo that came out that said something like, "Victory will be achieved when the average person is uncertain about climate science." Unfortunately, it obviously worked very well in the US and even overseas. It kept China and India from signing the Kyoto Protocol in 1998, which eventually led them to becoming some of the largest global polluters. So Exxon knew, and instead of changing or just doing nothing, they spent millions of dollars to confuse us while ramping up their operations. Half of the greenhouse gas emissions in our atmosphere came after 1988. Let's talk about modeling. Craig said, "Based on models that are only as accurate as the beliefs of the people who wrote and input the variables." I wonder if Craig knows who coded the models, has any objections to their credentials, or knows what a quasi-geostrophic potential vorticity equation is. I'd guess not. We just talked about how Exxon was modeling in the 70s and 80s. Let's talk about who does it now. We've got NASA, NOAA, top universities, and a global community of scientists who are working on climate modeling, and there's a consensus. No matter what the consensus is, there's still climate illiteracy. Take this for example. Chuck commented, "When someone says most likely, it just means they're making things up." Chuck, I think you have it backwards. When someone speaks in absolutes, that's when you need to question them. Probability is the nature of science. So I can't sit here and say with 100% confidence that human emissions are the cause of our global warming, but I can say that it is extremely likely based on the science. But I guess if you're employed, you're compromised. Sean says, "You are a paid individual that we can't trust." Okay, look, I've worked for 4 different companies over the course of 15 years, and not a single time did anyone tell me what I can or cannot say, what my forecast should or should not be. Everything you hear from me here on television has been 100% of my own volition and my own beliefs rooted in science. People oftentimes think that TV is more glamorous than it is. I promise you, it is not. The graphics, the forecast, the work, it's all 100% mine.
And Riley, I think we can attest to that, right? That some people think like, oh, you're in TV, you have makeup done for you.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, I get that all the time.
Yeah, you just stand in front of the TV and read a teleprompter.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
No, it's
at all.
not. It's not. Good facts there that you brought in. And what's really interesting is I know you post the comments from people who have, wrote or written those. Did you hear any feedback from them? Any more feedback?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the snowball effect where I made the first video that just mentions the term climate change. That triggers a lot of people, and the comments come rolling through. So I pick out a few comments that I could use as learning opportunities, and I made another video and I talk about them, and the comments come back, right? Again, and it's a new trove of comments that I can use. And this was the 3rd time I've done it. And I post this video, and sure, yeah, there are people that disagree, and they have their beliefs that are strongly held. And I'm just trying to open their eyes to different possibilities of things that maybe they've considered in the past or things they've never considered, and to try to give them a scientific point of view.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So that was our first block of Atmospheric Insight. We've got a very special guest for you coming up in a couple of minutes. So we'll be right back, and you'll see who we've got in the studio.
One thing a lot of longtime news viewers still ask me about is Blue Canyon. Why do you guys always go to Blue Canyon for your live shots in the snowstorms? We actually don't anymore. But yes, we always used to do our live shots from Blue Canyon about 5,000 feet high along Interstate 80. And there's one simple reason for that. We used to rely on a dish on the top of a van to broadcast a live signal from the mountain. Blue Canyon was the highest elevation along I-80 where we could transmit a live signal to our tower down in the valley. But we don't rely on these vans anymore. Nowadays, this little pack replaces all the broadcasting equipment in this van. This uses cellular technology to broadcast a TV signal. So as long as there's cell service, we can go anywhere along the mountain. So this allows us to broadcast from Boreal, Kingvale, all the different locations where you see us. So Blue Canyon, we love you. We just don't need you anymore.
But we need you, Dennis Shanahan. Welcome to Atmospheric Insight. A pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation. Lots of fun.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating about the technology, like you outlined. Used to have this huge truck with a huge antenna above it, and you need to lug that around. And there were limitations, like you mentioned, Blue Canyon.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that it's a good thing that we don't have to go live from Blue Canyon anymore is these storms have gotten warmer and warmer over the years. We used to reliably see snow with almost every storm at Blue Canyon at the 5,000-foot elevation, but now the fact that we have the technology to go live anywhere on the mountain is so helpful because we usually have to go to Kingvale or Donner Summit, Soda Springs. Those are some of the very reliable places that we can find snow, at least along Interstate 80.
Yeah, this is interesting. At a weather conference I went to, I think 2 or 3 years ago in Tahoe, one of the meteorologists was talking about how one of the effects of our warming climate is that we would have higher snow levels. So instead of getting snow at Blue Canyon, it's farther up the hill, it's farther up the hill. And that's bad for ski resorts, right? Bad for recreation, but it's also a concern for flooding because you don't have the snow coming down and sitting in place. Instead, it's just all runoff, right? It becomes water. It is water already, right? So that is an issue we think about as well. But you have seen so much going up to Tahoe over the years, right? Anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy people say, "Oh, did you draw the short straw having to go report from the snow?" And it's like, no, I volunteer to go to the snow. It's what I like to call a slam dunk story. You go up there is a story. There are visuals 360 degrees around you. There are always people to talk to, travelers to talk to. It's fun for me, but it's also a responsibility to be able to inform the public. They see sunny skies here in the valley sometimes and think that that translates to the mountains, and it doesn't. Sometimes, as you guys know, completely different weather up on the mountain. So to be able to stand up there and tell people, hey, if you're thinking of coming up here, here's what it's like, and here's why you might want to wait until this storm clears.
Yeah.
It's something I enjoy, but it's also a responsibility that I take seriously.
Yeah. Take me through a couple things with this too, because I know when you're traveling up there, you see a lot of people getting stuck. How do you explain to people and say, hey, it is not worth traveling up here? What do you suggest for them?
Yeah, people that are stuck, sometimes they're asking us for information, and I have to tell them, you're going to have to be patient and wait because the tow trucks, once the spinouts start up there. Now, this brings up an interesting point. They used to leave the interstate open and just deal with it. Now, when they get too many spinouts, they, meaning Caltrans, the CHP, they'll just close the interstate until they can get those spinouts cleared. But those people that are stuck in the snow that didn't come prepared, maybe they had chains or they have four-wheel drive and snow tires, but they don't know how to drive properly. They spin out, they overturn. It can sometimes be hours before a tow truck can arrive and get them out of there. So that's why we say full tank of gas, blankets, water, everything you're going to need to spend a long time, even if you're in the traffic that's the result of those accidents and those people just can't move sitting on the freeway. So just always tell people, yeah, just be over prepared if you're heading up into a winter driving situation.
Yeah, and I like to think that a lot of people assume that this won't happen to me, right? I'm a good
Right. Yeah.
driver. Yeah, I've done this before. I know what snow is like. I'm gonna be fine. But a lot of times it's out of your control.
Mhm.
You have a big rig that jackknifes on the road and you are stuck there all night. If you don't have water, if you don't have blankets, if you don't have some food, you could have a miserable or sometimes dangerous experience being stuck there. And you've seen it all, right?
Yeah, I've experienced it where my photographer and I had to spend all night on the mountain because a truck had jackknifed in a snowstorm. There was no moving. We couldn't get around it. We couldn't play the media card and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
let us through?" There was no passing. We literally spent all night, Howard and I, in the car, getting on each other's nerves. And then in the morning, we're like, well, we're still here. We started doing live shots for the morning show. We had reported in the 10 o'clock, and then we started on air again at 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
We couldn't go anywhere. Might as well keep working.
Hopefully you had some food.
We did have some snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had access to a gas station. We were
Okay,
actually
good.
very close to the Nyack Shell station. But yeah,
That's
you
huge.
don't want to be in that situation.
Right. I mean, and there's also the people like take it down a notch that don't expect them to have to chain up their tires. Never done it before, maybe never heard of chains, so that puts them in a precarious position too, right?
Yeah, and chains are, if you buy them at a big box store here in the Valley, generally $50 or less. If you have to buy them on the mountain, you're a captive audience, you're going to pay more than $100
They
for
mark it
those.
up.
Yeah, and then I also like to mention that people that have four-wheel drive think that they're invincible. And we don't generally see cars with chains spun out. It's the four-wheel drives who thought, oh, I got four-wheel drive. I can drive like I do in the Valley. They're the ones that spin out. It's 30 miles per hour in chain controls for a reason.
Yeah, it's very much that invincibility complex, right? You think you have experience, you have the right gear, but nope, the mountains doesn't care, right? The snow conditions can be brutal, and you can get stuck up there. So, Dennis, I want to talk about how over the years, you've been going up there. Can you point to something that maybe you've noticed that's changed with the way that snow is falling or coverage is happening here? Anything that's evolved over your time covering?
Well, and what really stands out is what we touched upon earlier is the snow elevations rising and how the snow at those lower elevations, like Blue Canyon, lower mid elevations, 5,000 feet, used to stick around all season. And what we see is that snow at that elevation falls there sometimes, melts away, rebuilds, melts away, rebuilds, melts away. You don't have as much of a consistent snowpack as you used to have. And that's why a lot of the ski resorts have had to rely in the drier years on their snowmaking technology. And some of the smaller resorts that didn't used to have snowmaking technology now have it because they realize they have to be able to have a backup for those years that nature just doesn't deliver.
Yeah, it's become a necessity for them at this point. And that's a risky thing that I've talked to some of my friends about. And I know we've talked about this too. If you buy a ski pass in advance, which you're heavily incentivized to do so because they have deals, they have promos, and then at some point they stop selling them. You're gambling at this point. Like, you don't know if it's going to be a good ski season. You don't know if it's going to be long. You don't know if it's going to be there at all.
Yep.
You're kind of on the hook, right?
Yeah.
For those.
I think I might have told you, I bought a 4-day pass for one of the resorts.
Yeah.
I haven't used a single day because it never aligned. Now, we had some good days. There were those 2 punctuated storm cycles throughout the season, but it never aligned right with my days off to get up there and use it. But yeah, total gamble.
Yeah, Riley, you're gonna have to get up there at some point.
I know I need to. My kids do like to ski. I'm not the best, but I still need to do it.
Yes, well, it's also just a beautiful place to be if you want to be a tourist for a weekend and just hang out without skiing.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
I'll probably be doing that this summer.
Yeah, the summer is a great time too. Dennis, I think you probably know this too. It's more popular in the summer than winter, right? Tahoe area?
Well, they have different benefits to each season. Of course, it's so much easier to get up there in the summer, and it gets a lot more crowded because of the camping and the hiking and the biking. But right now, we kind of call it the shoulder season, the spring, kind of after the snow, before the summer. Great time to visit. The locals will hate me saying that because it's the time when they get the roads to themselves. It's calmer. But really great time. There's no bad time to visit Tahoe, but spring is special.
But even if it's in the 70s, I wouldn't count on swimming in Lake Tahoe this time of the year.
Oh, no.
It's just ice water up there.
Yeah.
So cold.
Dennis, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight about what the snow is looking like, how it's changing, and your coverage and how it's done up in Tahoe.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Riley. And thanks for all the great work you guys do.
All right. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Atmospheric Insight.
Yeah, that was really cool to talk to Dennis about that, just because I know he has been here for a while, a veteran, going up there in the snow, and it's really neat to hear the stories that he talks about, because I learned from that and learned from you as well. But it's just really interesting to hear what he had to say.
Yeah, and here in the newsroom, we call that institutional knowledge, right? You've been here for a long time. You grew up in the area. You know the region, so you have that knowledge of what it takes to cover it properly. Dennis is a fantastic reporter and fantastic forecaster too. He's doing it for a while before you showed up.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk more about wine, shall we?
Perfect.
Genevieve Melzer takes us back to a vineyard.
We're back at Teneral Cellars to discuss how weather plays a role in how wine tastes and turns out. Do heavy rainstorms impact wine production?
It certainly can. I mean, I think the biggest challenge is if If it's warm and it's raining, that can lead to mold if you're not on top of that. Yes, because all of a sudden you've got a lot of moisture in the vineyards, and then you have the heat, and then that can create mold. So, having a farming team always ready, and I think with, the different weather patterns these days, that you really have to be on top of that. And so the rain can significantly impact that. I mean, you're also getting a lot more moisture in the ground. And then this time of the year, that can lead to significant weed growth. And what's interesting for the wine region is we actually need weeds. Weeds are, a great fertilizer. We need the bugs, we need the weeds. It's unfortunate that in our industry, not everyone adheres to sustainable farming practices or organic like we do. And some people still use things like Roundup. I mean, that's not only killing the weeds, but it's killing the natural fertilizer, and then ultimately it's killing the vine, and that gets into what you're drinking. So we always like to say, you have to know what you're drinking. And if you're gonna go buy a $3 bottle of wine, just understand what's going into that. That's probably not a sustainable farming practice. And so, just like you choose organic fruit, or food, same applies to the wine industry. And we've seen the dramatic changes in the weather. I mean, our vineyard in Fairplay is at 2,700 feet, so we've seen, different seasons where we've had a lot of snow that even sticks. And then the last couple of years, it's been really mellow. Like maybe we'll have, I think a couple of weeks ago there was a little snow, but other than that, last season we literally had a dusting of snow. And it doesn't hurt the vineyard. So in the winter, when the vines go dormant, they're sleeping. So they're really resilient. Vineyard vines are, and so the cold doesn't impact that.
Can too much rain impact the flavor of the wine?
I think it really just depends on what time of the season it is, and because again, it can impact it through it turning to mold, and if you don't get them off. But typically in the summer, by the time it's harvest season, you're not having a lot of rain in the summer. So it's really more in the springtime, and it's really more of the concern about the mold issue. So yeah, the water's fantastic. I mean, we need that. We need good rain, right, to just bring sort of the vigor and then bring out the weeds and all the great fertilizing and nutrients that the vines need. So the rain is really critical to everything, keeping, not having the ground too dry. Again, this is where the amazing farmers that we have and people that really know that side of the business are so integral to the wine industry. There's really not another industry, when you think about it, that does everything from plants the seeds, to farms the product, to picks the product, to produces the product, that sells the product. It's A to Z. And so it's really a fascinating industry, but it's so complex. I mean, people just see the bottle, see the wine in their glass and think, yum, that's yummy, or it's not. But there's so much that goes into it.
Does fog affect the grapes?
Oh yeah, it impacts the flavor actually. So that's why some of the best Pinots come from the coast, because you'll get these foggy nights, and so you get the cold weather, and then a lot of times it'll be warmer in the afternoon, and that can significantly impact the flavor. And different regions have not only different soil, which impacts the flavor, but those weather patterns impact the flavor.
Do people want different wine varietals as the seasons change?
Temperature actually impacts your flavor sensitivity. So when it's colder, your palate actually mutes a bit. And because it's muted, you tend to gravitate toward bolder, richer, we'll talk about wines here. So that's why when people in the winter time say, oh, I just want to cuddle up with a big red, a Cabernet, or a glass of Syrah. And then when it's summertime, our palate's more sensitive to acid and brightness. And so then you gravitate toward, I want a really bright, white, crispy glass of wine.
A huge thanks to Jill and Lisa at Teneral Cellars for having me out at the tasting room. So next time you're enjoying a glass of wine, remember that weather impacted how it tastes. Now back.
Oh, thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. It's meteorology and viticulture. Go together like that.
Love it.
All right, Riley, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone at home, for joining us for another episode of Atmospheric Insight.